The little girl's letter stopped a business deal. What it revealed changed everything. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. They say money talks. In my world, it screams. It commands. It conquers. For 23 years, I built an empire on that simple truth. Victor Ashford, CEO of Ashford Global Enterprises, the man who turned failing companies into gold mines, who made shareholders weep with joy at quarterly reports, who never lost a negotiation, never backed down from a deal, and never ever let emotions cloud judgment. I didn't believe in mercy. Mercy was for the weak. I didn't believe in coincidences. Everything happened for a reason, and that reason was usually profit. Love, a chemical reaction. Kindness, a social construct exploited by the unsuccessful. I was a machine, and I was proud of it. The Riverside Industrial Complex deal was supposed to be my masterpiece. $140 million to acquire a struggling textile manufacturing facility on the outskirts of the city, tear it down, and convert the land into luxury condominiums. The property sat on prime real estate near the waterfront. My analysts projected 800% returns within 5 years. The board was ecstatic. My investors were practically salivating. The company, Riverside Textiles, was a relic. A family-owned operation that somehow survived into the 21st century, employing 200 people who still believed in honest work and fair wages, quaint concepts that had no place in modern economics. They were drowning in debt, behind on rent, and desperate. I offered them a lifeline, enough money to pay off their creditors and walk away with dignity. They had no choice but to accept. I was 3 days away from closing the deal, 3 days from adding another victory to my legacy, 3 days from proving once again that sentiment had no place in business. That was when Margaret, my assistant, walked into my office with an envelope. "Mr. Ashford, this came for you this morning." She placed it on my desk with unusual hesitation, her fingers lingering on the paper as if reluctant to let it go. I glanced at it without interest. "What is it?" "It's, addressed to you personally, hand-delivered to reception, no return address." I picked it up with 2 fingers, examining it like a specimen. The envelope was cheap, the kind you could buy at any dollar store. My name was written in clumsy handwriting across the front, the letters uneven and uncertain. Some were too big, others too small. A child's handwriting. "Is this some kind of publicity stunt?" I asked, already losing interest. "Did one of those activist groups send their kid to deliver a sob story?" Margaret shook her head. "I don't think so, sir. The receptionist said it was a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. She came alone, asked for the envelope to be given to you, and left before anyone could ask questions." I tossed the envelope onto my desk. "Throw it away." "Sir, perhaps you should—" "Margaret." I looked at her with the cold stare that had made executives twice my age stumble over their words. "I have a board meeting in 30 minutes and a conference call with Tokyo in an hour. I don't have time for children's games." She nodded, collected the envelope, and turned to leave. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way the morning light caught the envelope as she picked it up. Maybe it was the unusual disturbance in my otherwise perfectly orchestrated day. Maybe it was nothing at all. Wait. The word left my mouth before I could reconsider. "Leave it." Margaret placed the envelope back on my desk and left without another word. I stared at it for a long moment, annoyed by my own curiosity. Then, with a sigh of irritation, I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the kind torn from a school notebook. The same childish handwriting covered both sides, the pencil pressing hard into the paper in some places, barely visible in others. There were smudges and erasure marks, evidence of careful thought and revision. I read, "Dear Mr. Ashford, my name is Emma. I am 9 years old. I don't know if you will read this letter, but I hope you do. Please don't close Riverside Textiles. I know you want to make apartments there, but a lot of people need their jobs. My teacher says that sometimes people with money don't understand what it's like to not have money. I think maybe you are like that. My mom used to work at Riverside. She worked very hard every day. She came home tired, but she always smiled at me. She said work was important because it helped people. She made clothes that kept people warm. She was proud of that. My mom died 2 years ago. She got sick at work and nobody helped her fast enough. The doctor said if someone had called 911 sooner, she would be okay. But the supervisor said they couldn't stop the machines because there was a big order. By the time they took her to the hospital, it was too late. I live with my aunt now. She works at Riverside too. She says if you close the factory, she won't have a job anymore. She says we might have to move away. I don't want to move away. This is where my mom is buried. I visit her grave every Sunday after church. I don't think you are a bad person, Mr. Ashford. I think maybe you just don't know about us. I think maybe if you knew, you would change your mind. Please think about the people who work at Riverside. They are good people. They have families. They have children like me. I hope you have a nice day. Emma Rodriguez P.S. My mom's name was Sophia Rodriguez. Maybe you remember her. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it down, leaned back in my chair, and pressed my fingers to my temples. A headache was forming, sharp and insistent. Sophia Rodriguez. The name triggered something in my memory, vague and uncomfortable. I pulled up my computer and accessed the company's archived incident reports. It took me 20 minutes of searching before I found it. A workplace fatality at one of my subsidiary manufacturing plants, dated March 14, 2 years prior. Sophia Rodriguez, age 32, collapsed on the factory floor due to a previously undiagnosed heart condition. Emergency services were called. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. There was a note at the bottom of the report. Family declined to pursue legal action. Settlement offered and accepted. Case closed. I had never seen this report before. Why would I? I owned 47 companies. I couldn't be expected to review every incident, every accident, every unfortunate event. That's what I paid lawyers and HR departments for. They handled these situations quietly, efficiently, without bothering me with the messy details. But now those messy details had a face, a name, a daughter. I called my legal department. I need the file on Sophia Rodriguez. March 2023 fatality at Riverside Textile subsidiary. One moment, Mr. Ashford. The file arrived in my email within minutes. I opened it and began reading. The facts were straightforward. Sophia Rodriguez experienced a cardiac event during her shift. The floor supervisor, following company protocol, assessed the situation before calling emergency services. The delay was 17 minutes. The coroner's report indicated that earlier intervention might have saved her life, though it was not guaranteed. The family was offered a settlement of $75,000 in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and waiving all rights to future litigation. The daughter, Emma Rodriguez, was a minor and therefore not party to the agreement, though her legal guardian, an aunt named Carmen Rodriguez, signed on her behalf. I closed the file and stared at the wall of my office where my degrees and awards hung in perfect alignment. Harvard MBA, Entrepreneur of the Year, 3 years running, Forbes cover story, the man who never loses, the man who never loses. I picked up the letter again and read the postscript. My mom's name was Sophia Rodriguez. Maybe you remember her. No, I thought. I didn't remember her. I never knew her. She was a number in a report, a line item in a legal settlement, a problem that was solved before it could become a liability. But her daughter remembered her. Her daughter visited her grave every Sunday. Her daughter was about to lose her home because I wanted to build luxury condominiums. I stood abruptly and walked to the window, looking down at the city below. From 43 floors up, people looked like ants, scurrying about their meaningless little lives. That was how I had always seen them, interchangeable, expendable, irrelevant to the larger mechanisms of commerce and progress. But Emma Rodriguez didn't see it that way. She saw people, families, lives that mattered. I pressed my intercom. Margaret, cancel my morning meetings. Sir? The board meeting? Cancel them all. Tell them I'm dealing with an urgent matter. And get me everything we have on Riverside Textiles. Everything. Financial records, employee files, safety reports, all of it. Yes, sir. Is everything all right? No, I said quietly. Nothing is all right. I spent the rest of the day buried in documents. The picture that emerged was uglier than I had imagined. Riverside Textiles wasn't just struggling, it had been systematically gutted over the past decade. Previous ownership had cut safety measures, reduced quality control, and deferred equipment maintenance to maximize short-term profits before selling. The workers who remained were loyal to the company not because of good management, but despite terrible management. They stayed because they had nowhere else to go, because the local economy had collapsed, because they believed in the work itself. Sofia Rodriguez's death wasn't an isolated incident. There had been other accidents, other close calls, other moments when profit was prioritized over people. My legal team had been very efficient at making these problems disappear. I found photographs of the Riverside Textiles facility in the files. It was old, certainly, but there was something dignified about it. The brick facade had weathered 100 years of seasons. The workers in the background of one photo looked tired but purposeful. These weren't people looking for a handout. They were asking for a chance. By 6 o'clock, my head of acquisitions, Richard Chen, appeared at my door. "Victor, what's going on? You missed the board meeting. They're asking questions." I gestured to the files scattered across my desk. "Tell me about Riverside Textiles." Richard frowned. "What do you want to know? It's a failing business on valuable land. We're getting it for 30 cents on the dollar. It's brilliant. Tell me about the people who work there." "The people?" Richard looked confused. "Victor, they're factory workers, low-skill labor. They'll find other jobs." "Will they?" I picked up a demographic report. Average age is 47. 60% have been with the company for over 15 years. This is a single industry town. When Riverside closes, what do these people do? Richard shrugged. "That's not our problem. We're not a charity. We're also not supposed to be executioners." Richard stared at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "What's gotten into you?" "This is the deal we've been working on for 8 months. Everything is lined up. The permits are approved, the financing is secured, the demolition company is ready to go. We sign in 3 days." I held up the letter. "Have you read this?" Richard took it, skimmed it, and handed it back. "A kid wrote you a letter." "So what?" "Victor, this is emotional manipulation. Someone put her up to it, probably some activist group trying to derail the deal. She came alone. She's 9 years old. She didn't come up with this herself. Her mother died in one of our facilities, Richard. We paid the family off and buried it." Richard's expression didn't change. "That's what settlements are for. We handled it properly. There was no negligence on our part. The woman had a pre-existing condition. She collapsed on the floor and nobody called for help for 17 minutes. Because the supervisor was following protocol. We've been through this, Victor. Our lawyers cleared us of any wrongdoing." "Legally, yes." I stood and moved to the window again, my back to Richard. "But morally? Ethically? Since when do you care about morals and ethics?" Richard's voice took on an edge of frustration. "Victor, I've worked with you for 12 years. You've always said business is business. You've always said we make decisions based on data, not feelings. What's changed?" I turned to face him, and for the first time in my career, I didn't have an answer. What had changed? It was just a letter, just words on paper from a child I'd never met. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't affect me. But it did. "I want to meet her," I said. "Meet who?" "Emma Rodriguez, the girl who wrote the letter. I want to talk to her." Richard threw up his hands. "This is insane. You can't let a 9-year-old girl dictate business strategy." "I'm not asking your permission, Richard. Find her, arrange a meeting." "Victor, that's all. You can leave." Richard stood there for another moment, clearly wanting to argue, then shook his head and walked out. I heard him muttering something to Margaret about stress and breakdown. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was having a breakdown. 23 years of perfect rationality, perfect control, perfect ruthlessness, and now I was unraveling over a child's letter. I sat down at my desk and pulled out my phone. I had dozens of messages from board members, investors, lawyers, all asking what was happening, why I had disappeared. I ignored them all and instead found myself searching for Carmen Rodriguez on social media. It took some time, but I found her. Her profile picture showed a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and tired smile, her arm around a little girl with dark hair and a gap-toothed grin. Emma. I scrolled through Carmen's posts. They were mundane, the ordinary documentation of an ordinary life. Pictures of Emma at school plays, updates about job concerns and bills and small victories. A photo of two women standing in front of Riverside Textiles, arms linked, both wearing factory uniforms. The caption read, "Me and Sophia on her last day. Missing you, Hermana." I stared at that photo for a long time. Sophia Rodriguez looked young, vibrant, alive. She looked like someone with dreams, with hopes, with a daughter who adored her. She looked like a person, not a line item in a legal settlement. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in 2 decades, I felt something I couldn't categorize or control. It felt like shame. The next morning, Margaret informed me that she had located Emma Rodriguez. She lived with her Aunt Carmen in a small apartment 3 miles from Riverside Textiles. Carmen worked the morning shift at the factory. Emma attended Lincoln Elementary School and spent her afternoons at a community center that offered free childcare for working families. "Would you like me to arrange a meeting?" Margaret asked. "Yes, but do it carefully. I don't want to frighten them." Margaret nodded, and I saw something in her expression that I'd never noticed before. Approval. In 12 years of working for me, Margaret had been efficient, professional, and unreadable. But now, for just a moment, she looked pleased. The meeting was arranged for that evening at a neutral location, a small coffee shop near Emma's school. I arrived early, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee I didn't drink. I had no idea what I was going to say. I had negotiated with Fortune 500 CEOs, with government officials, with ruthless competitors. But the prospect of talking to a 9-year-old girl terrified me. They arrived exactly on time. Carmen entered first, her hand protectively on Emma's shoulder. She spotted me immediately and approached with the cautious expression of someone walking into a trap. Emma was smaller than I had imagined. She wore a purple jacket that was slightly too large and sneakers that had seen better days. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she clutched a worn backpack against her chest like a shield. I stood awkwardly. "Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma, thank you for meeting me." Carmen's jaw was tight. "I only came because Emma insisted. She said if you wanted to meet her, it meant you read her letter." "I did read it." I looked at Emma. "Multiple times." Emma studied me with the disconcerting directness that only children possess. "Are you going to close the factory?" No preamble, no small talk, just the question that mattered. I gestured to the booth. "Please sit down. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Hot chocolate?" Emma shook her head, but Carmen ordered 2 hot chocolates and slid into the booth across from me, keeping Emma close. We sat in uncomfortable silence until the drinks arrived. Emma wrapped her small hands around the mug and took a careful sip, leaving a foam mustache on her upper lip. Carmen wiped it away with a napkin, a gesture so tender and maternal that I had to look away. "Emma," I began, my voice unsteady in a way it had never been in any boardroom. "Your letter. It made me think about things I hadn't considered before." "Like what?" Her eyes were unwavering. "Like the people who work at Riverside. Like what happens to them when the factory closes." "So you're still going to close it?" It wasn't a question. I hesitated. "I don't know." Carmen leaned forward. "Mr. Ashford, I don't know what you want from us. You're a billionaire. You own half the city. What difference does it make to you if 200 people lose their jobs? What difference does it make if one little girl has to move away from her mother's grave?" "It shouldn't make a difference," I admitted. "Logically, rationally, it shouldn't matter at all." "But it does," Emma asked quietly. I looked at her, this small person who had somehow reached through my armor and found something I thought I'd killed years ago. "Yes, it does." Carmen's expression softened slightly. "Emma's been talking about you all day. She was convinced that if you knew the truth, you'd help us. She has more faith in people than I do." "Maybe she's right too." I paused. "I want to know about your sister, about Sophia." Carmen's eyes glistened. "Why? So you can feel better about what your company did?" "No, because I should have known about her while she was alive. I should have made sure she was safe." The silence that followed was heavy with judgment and possibility. Finally, Carmen began to speak. She told me about Sophia, about a single mother who worked double shifts to give her daughter a better life, about a woman who believed in hard work and dignity, who never complained, who smiled even when she was exhausted. She told me about the day Sophia collapsed, about the 17 minutes that ticked by while a supervisor consulted a manual and weighed productivity against human life. She told me about Emma, who came home from school to find police officers at the door with terrible news. They offered us money, Carmen said, her voice bitter. $75,000 and a piece of paper saying we'd never talk about it. I wanted to fight. I wanted to sue, to expose what happened. But I'm a factory worker. I couldn't afford lawyers. And Emma needed stability, so I signed. I'm sorry, I said. The words felt inadequate, microscopic against the weight of her loss. Sorry doesn't bring Sophia back. Sorry doesn't change anything. You're right, it doesn't. I looked at Emma again. But maybe I can change what happens next. Emma's eyes widened. You mean you won't close the factory? I mean, I'm going to look at every option. I'm going to talk to my team. I'm going to find a way to do this differently. Differently how? Carmen was skeptical, and she had every right to be. I don't know yet, but I'm going to try. Emma reached across the table and placed her small hand on mine. The gesture was so unexpected, so innocent, that I froze. Thank you, Mr. Ashford, she said. My mom would be happy that you're trying. I looked down at her hand on mine and felt something crack inside me. A fissure in the ice I'd built around myself over decades of calculated indifference. We talked for another hour. Carmen told me about life at the factory, about the workers who had become family, about the pride they took in their craft despite the difficult conditions. Emma told me about school, about wanting to be a doctor someday so she could help people the way doctors tried to help her mom. She showed me a drawing she'd made of her mother, carefully rendered in colored pencil, Sophia's smile captured with the simple honesty of a child's love. When we finally parted ways, I shook Carmen's hand and crouched down to Emma's level. I can't make any promises, I told her, but I want you to know that your letter mattered. You mattered. Emma hugged me, wrapping her thin arms around my neck. I stood there, awkward and overwhelmed, until she let go and smiled at me. I think you're a good person, Mr. Ashford, even if you don't think so. As I watched them leave, Carmen's protective hand on Emma's shoulder, I realized that the 9-year-old girl had seen something in me that I'd forgotten existed. The next 48 hours were a war. I called an emergency board meeting and announced that I was reconsidering the Riverside Textiles deal. The reaction was explosive. 3 board members threatened to resign. 2 major investors called to demand explanations. Richard Chen accused me of losing my mind. This is career suicide, he said, standing in my office at midnight as I pored over financial models. The shareholders will crucify you. The board will force you out. Everything you've built will collapse because you let a child manipulate you. She didn't manipulate me. She told me the truth. The truth? Richard laughed bitterly. The truth is that business requires tough decisions. The truth is that you can't save everyone. The truth is that sentimentality is a luxury we can't afford. We can afford anything we want, Richard. We choose not to. This is insane. You're throwing away a $140 million deal for what? 200 factory jobs? They're not your responsibility. Maybe they should be. Richard stared at me. I don't even recognize you anymore. Good. I didn't recognize myself either. He left, slamming the door behind him. I went back to work. I spent 2 days locked in my office with my best analysts. We ran every scenario, explored every option. The numbers didn't lie. Converting the property to condominiums was the most profitable path. But profit wasn't my only consideration anymore. We found alternatives. The land could be partially developed, with the factory preserved and modernized. We could invest in new equipment, retrain workers, pivot to sustainable textile production that was growing in demand. It would cost more upfront and generate lower returns, but it was viable. I could save the factory. I could save the jobs. But it meant sacrificing my original deal, accepting lower profits, and facing the fury of my board and shareholders. On the morning of the scheduled contract signing, I walked into the boardroom with a revised proposal. 15 board members stared at me with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. I presented my alternative plan: a phased renovation of Riverside Textiles, investment in modern equipment, retraining programs for workers, and partial land development that preserved the factory. The projected returns were 40% lower than the original deal. The room erupted in arguments. Voices overlapped. Accusations flew. I was called naive, reckless, sentimental. One board member suggested I was having a mental breakdown. Another demanded my resignation. I let them rage. Then I held up my hand for silence. I understand your concerns, I said. Everything you're saying makes sense from a purely financial perspective. But there's something you need to know. I told them about Sofia Rodriguez, about Emma's letter, about the 17 minutes that separated a woman's life from a legal settlement. I told them about meeting Emma, about looking into the eyes of a child who believed that people in power could choose to be better. We can maximize profits, I said, or we can maximize value, real value, the kind that means something beyond quarterly reports. I'm not asking you to abandon capitalism. I'm asking you to consider that we have the power to choose how we use our resources, and that choice defines who we are. The silence that followed was absolute. Then slowly, board members began to speak. Not all of them were convinced. 3 voted against the new proposal, but 12 voted in favor, and that was enough. Richard Chen resigned that afternoon. 2 investors pulled out. My stock value dropped 6%, but the deal went through with the new terms. 6 months later, I stood in front of Riverside Textiles as workers arrived for their shift. The building had been cleaned, repaired, and equipped with modern machinery. New safety protocols were in place. The workers had been retrained. Carmen Rodriguez was promoted to floor supervisor. Emma stood beside me holding my hand. We had become unlikely friends, meeting every few weeks for coffee, hot chocolate for her, and conversation. She told me about school. I told her about business. She reminded me why I was doing this. It looks nice, Emma said, studying the renovated factory. It does. I crouched down beside her. Your letter changed everything, you know. She shook her head. I just told you the truth. You changed things. Maybe we both did. Carmen emerged from the factory entrance, spotted us, and walked over. She looked different now, confident and purposeful. Mr. Ashford, Emma, what are you doing here? Just checking on things, I said. How's it going? Better than I could have imagined. The new equipment is fantastic. The safety measures actually work. And the workers, they have hope again. She paused. You kept your promise. I tried to. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Can I show you something? She led me around the building to a small garden area that the workers had created. In the center was a memorial bench with a plaque that read, "In memory of Sofia Rodriguez and all who came before. May we always remember their dignity and honor their work." The workers made it, Emma explained. They wanted to remember my mom. I sat down on the bench and Emma sat beside me. Carmen joined us, and for a few minutes, we simply sat there in the morning sun. 3 people connected by tragedy and transformation. Do you ever regret it? Carmen asked suddenly. Giving up all that money? I considered the question. 6 months ago, the answer would have been immediate and definite. Now I wasn't sure how to respond. I regret a lot of things, I finally said. I regret not knowing about Sofia. I regret years of making decisions without thinking about the human cost. I regret building an empire on indifference. I looked at Emma. But this? No, I don't regret this. Emma smiled, that gap-toothed grin that had become familiar. My mom would like you, Mr. Ashford. I would have liked to meet her. We sat there a while longer. Then Carmen returned to work, and I walked Emma to the car that would take her to school. Before she got in, she turned and hugged me, the way she always did. Thank you for listening, she whispered. Thank you for writing. As I drove back to my office, I thought about the past 6 months, the board fights, the investor calls, the media criticism, the financial hit to my company. It had been brutal, exhausting, and worth every moment. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd become a saint. I was still Victor Ashford, CEO, still driven by success and achievement. But now I measured success differently. I asked different questions. I considered different variables. And sometimes, late at night when I was alone in my office, I would take out Emma's letter and read it again. The paper was worn now, creased from being folded and unfolded so many times. But the words were still clear, still honest, still true. I don't think you are a bad person, Mr. Ashford. I think maybe you just don't know about us. She was right. I hadn't known. But now I did, and I could never unknow it. 3 months after that, I established the Sofia Rodriguez Foundation, dedicated to workplace safety and supporting families affected by workplace accidents. Emma cut the ribbon at the opening ceremony, standing on a step stool to reach the oversized scissors. A year after receiving Emma's letter, I testified before Congress about the need for stronger workplace safety regulations. My former colleagues thought I'd lost my mind. My new colleagues thought I'd found my conscience. Maybe they were both right. Emma is 10 now. She still visits her mother's grave every Sunday. But now I sometimes go with her, standing back respectfully while she talks to Sophia, telling her mother about school and friends and dreams of becoming a doctor. She would be proud of you, I told Emma once. I think she'd be proud of you too, Emma replied. I'm not the same man I was before that letter arrived. The machine is broken, and I'm glad. I make less money now. I sleep better. I look at people and see people, not assets or liabilities or obstacles. Sometimes in board meetings when we're debating a difficult decision, I'll think about Emma's letter. I'll think about Sofia Rodriguez, about 17 minutes, about the price of indifference, and I'll ask myself a question I never used to ask. What would a good person do? It doesn't always change my decision. Business is still business, and I still have responsibilities to shareholders and employees and stakeholders. But it changes how I make that decision. It changes what I consider. It changes who I am. They say money talks. In my world, it screams. But I learned something important. Sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one that deserves to be heard the most. Sometimes that voice belongs to a 9-year-old girl with a pencil and a piece of lined paper, brave enough to believe that even people who seem unreachable can be reached. She was right. And that letter, that simple, honest letter, didn't just stop a business deal. It stopped me from becoming someone I never wanted to be. It reminded me that beneath the CEO, beneath the wealth and power and reputation, I was still human. I could still be moved. I could still change. I could still choose to be better. Emma Rodriguez wrote me a letter, and it changed everything. But really, it didn't change anything at all. It revealed what was always there, buried beneath years of calculated coldness and deliberate disconnection. It revealed that I was capable of caring, of conscience, of humanity. I just needed someone to remind me. Sometimes the most important deals aren't the ones we make. They're the ones we have the courage to walk away from. And sometimes the most valuable thing we can do with our power isn't to acquire more of it. It's to use it to protect those who have none. A 9-year-old girl taught me that, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the faith she had in me. Senator Ashford. Epilogue, 5 years later. The sun was setting over the city as I stood on the observation deck of the newly opened Sofia Rodriguez Community Center, a 5-story building that housed medical clinics, job training programs, childcare services, and educational facilities for working families. The building stood on land I had once planned to turn into luxury condominiums. Emma was 14 now, taller, more confident, but still with that same unwavering gaze that had changed my life. She stood beside me, looking out at the neighborhood below, where Riverside Textiles continued to operate, now expanded and thriving as one of the leading sustainable textile manufacturers in the region. I got my acceptance letter today, she said quietly. I turned to her. And? She smiled, pulling an envelope from her backpack. I got into the medical magnet program, full scholarship. I felt pride swell in my chest, a feeling I'd become familiar with over the past 5 years. Your mother would be so proud. So would you, she said, then corrected herself. You are. She was right. Over the years, I had become something I never expected. A mentor, a friend, almost a father figure to this extraordinary young woman. Carmen had welcomed me into their small family, cautiously at first, then with genuine warmth as I proved through actions, not words, that my transformation was real. "I've been thinking," Emma said, still looking out at the city, "about that day I wrote you the letter. I was so scared. Aunt Carmen said it was pointless, that rich people don't care about people like us. But I had to try. I'm glad you did. Do you remember what you were like before? Before the letter?" I considered the question. Every day, I remember who I was, and I make sure I never become that person again. She turned to face me. "But you weren't a monster, Mr. Ashford. You were just disconnected. You didn't know. And once you knew, you changed. That's what matters. You had more faith in me than I deserved." "Maybe," she smiled, "but I think people are capable of more good than they realize. They just need someone to believe in them." Below us, the community center was filling with people. There was a ceremony tonight, the 5-year anniversary of its opening. Hundreds of families whose lives had been touched by the programs we'd created would be there. Workers from Riverside Textiles, children who'd received medical care, single mothers who'd found job training and support. "I need to tell you something," I said. "I've been working on it for months, and I wanted you to be the first to know." Emma raised an eyebrow, curious. "I'm stepping down as CEO of Ashford Global Enterprises." Her eyes widened. "What? Why?" "Because it's time. I've spent 5 years transforming the company, implementing ethical practices, creating social impact initiatives. But there are younger, more idealistic people who can take it further than I can. I'm 62 years old, Emma. I've spent 40 years building an empire. I want to spend the next 20 years doing something different." "Like what?" "Like this." I gestured to the community center. "The foundation has grown beyond anything I imagined. We're operating in 12 cities now, helping thousands of families. But we could do so much more. I want to dedicate myself to it completely." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. "Will you be okay? I mean, being CEO was your whole identity." "It was," I agreed. "But I learned something from a very wise 9-year-old girl. Identity isn't about titles or money or power. It's about who you choose to be when faced with hard decisions. And I choose to be someone who uses whatever time I have left to make a difference." She hugged me then, and I hugged her back, this remarkable young woman who had seen something in me worth saving. "My mom would really, really like you," she whispered. "I wish I could have known her." "You do know her. She's in every good thing you've done since that day. She's in every worker who kept their job, every family who found help, every kid who got medical care. She's in me, and she's in you now too." We stood there as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city. In the gathering darkness, the lights of the community center blazed bright, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood that had almost been erased for profit. Carmen found us a few minutes later. "There you are, the ceremony's about to start. Emma, you're supposed to give a speech, remember?" Emma groaned. "I hate public speaking." "You wrote a letter to a billionaire CEO when you were 9 years old," I reminded her. "I think you can handle a speech." She laughed, and we made our way downstairs together. The three of us, an unlikely family bound by tragedy and transformation. The auditorium was packed. I saw familiar faces, workers from Riverside Textiles, families I'd met through the foundation, board members who had supported my radical change in direction, and dozens of children whose lives had been changed by the programs we'd created. Emma took the stage, nervous but determined. She adjusted the microphone and began to speak. 5 years ago, I wrote a letter. I was 9 years old, and I didn't really think anyone would read it. I just knew I had to try. My mom always told me that doing the right thing was more important than being comfortable. So even though I was scared, I wrote that letter." She paused, looking out at the audience. "I wrote it to Mr. Victor Ashford, the CEO of the company that was going to close the factory where my aunt worked. I told him about my mom, about the people who would lose their jobs, about why it mattered. And he read it. He really read it. And then he did something I never expected. He listened." Emma's voice grew stronger. "Mr. Ashford could have ignored my letter. He could have closed the factory and made lots of money. Nobody would have blamed him. That's what businesses do, right? But he didn't. He chose differently, and that choice changed hundreds of lives. She looked directly at me. Mr. Ashford taught me something important. He taught me that people can change, that it's never too late to choose compassion over profit, humanity over indifference. He taught me that one person, even a kid with a pencil and a piece of paper, can make a difference if they're brave enough to speak up. The audience applauded, and Emma smiled. This community center exists because someone listened, because someone cared, because someone chose to be better. My mom always said that the world changes one person at a time, one choice at a time. I think she was right. She concluded her speech and stepped down from the stage to thunderous applause. I met her at the bottom of the stairs and shook her hand formally, then pulled her into a hug. "You were brilliant," I told her. "I learned from the best," she replied. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, handshakes, and photographs. But the moment I'll remember most came at the very end, when everyone had left and the building was quiet. Emma, Carmen, and I stood in the lobby, looking at the wall where we'd installed a memorial. It featured a large photograph of Sofia Rodriguez in her factory uniform, smiling at the camera with pride and warmth. Below the photo was a plaque with words Emma had chosen. Sofia Rodriguez, 1991-2023. She believed in the dignity of work and the power of love. She taught us to never give up on people. This center stands in her honor and in honor of all who work with pride, persevere with hope, and believe in a better tomorrow. She'd be amazed by all this, Carmen said softly, wiping tears from her eyes. My sister, the factory worker from nowhere, inspiring all of this. She didn't inspire it, I said. Emma did, but Emma learned it from Sofia. No, Emma said firmly. You changed, Mr. Ashford. You chose to change. That's not on me or my mom. That's on you. Maybe we all change each other, I suggested. Carmen put her arm around Emma. Come on, mija. It's late. School tomorrow. As they prepared to leave, Emma turned back to me one last time. Mr. Ashford, thank you for everything, for reading my letter, for listening, for being the person I hoped you would be. Thank you for giving me the chance, I replied, for believing I could be better than I was. After they left, I stood alone in the empty lobby, looking at Sofia's photograph. I thought about the path that had led me here, from ruthless CEO to something I never imagined I could be, someone who actually made a difference. I pulled out my wallet and removed a worn folded piece of paper. Emma's original letter, the one that had started everything. I'd carried it with me every day for 5 years, a reminder of who I used to be and who I chose to become. I unfolded it carefully and read the words one more time. I don't think you are a bad person, Mr. Ashford. I think maybe you just don't know about us. I think maybe if you knew you would change your mind. She was right. I didn't know. But then I did. And once I knew, I couldn't unknow. I couldn't go back to the comfortable indifference of my former life. I folded the letter and put it back in my wallet, then turned off the lights and locked the doors. Outside, the city stretched out before me, millions of lives intersecting, struggling, hoping, dreaming. I used to look at the city and see opportunities for profit. Now I saw people, individuals with stories and families and dreams, people who mattered, whether they were rich or poor, powerful or powerless. A 9-year-old girl had taught me that, and in doing so, she had saved me from a life I didn't even realize was killing me. They say you can't put a price on conscience. They're wrong. I know exactly what it cost me. $140 million, 3 board members, 2 major investors, and 6% of my stock value. They say you can't measure the value of doing the right thing. They're wrong about that too. I can measure it precisely. 200 jobs saved, 1 factory revitalized, 12 community centers opened, thousands of families helped, and 1 young girl who still believed in the goodness of people. But most importantly, I can measure it in the way I see myself when I look in the mirror. I used to see Victor Ashford, the man who never lost. Now I see Victor Ashford, the man who lost everything that didn't matter and gained everything that did. I started walking home through the quiet streets, and for the first time in decades, I felt at peace. Not because I had conquered or acquired or won, but because I had chosen humanity over profit, compassion over indifference, and connection over isolation. A letter from a little girl had stopped a business deal, but it had started something far more valuable, a life worth living. And that, I finally understood, was the best deal I ever made.